first off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Oh shit, you guys. What an episode this is gonna be. I'm already feeling it. Feeling a little emotional. This episode is entitled Unmet Potential. And how we're planning on doing this is that Joshua and I are each going to record separately our thoughts just on this idea of unmet potential, listen to each other's segments, and then come together and talk about it. So that's what sort of the flow of this episode is. Unmet potential. I think it's a dangerous concept. That is the conclusion I have come to, that this idea of unmet potential as something that even holds space in my life is dangerous. And as you guys know, I'm pretty all over the place these days in a lot of ways. So I would not be surprised if, it would surprise people to hear me say that, but I really recommend reading this BuzzFeed article, this BuzzFeed op-ed called "How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation" by Ann Peterson. Because when this idea of unmet potential first sort of was offered by Joshua, this is immediately where my mind went about how I think this is a generational problem, an American problem, and a generational problem, right? I feel like, yes, as I've mentioned before on, I think, Weekly Gaze, in particular, I am the only one of my three siblings who is not autistic, right? So I've always had this sort of golden boy, sort of like survivor guilt situation where I'm the one who is supposed to succeed. And I am the one who is supposed to do all these things. And it's funny because I think about my younger brother, who is very high functioning. And, sometimes we get concerned about him because now this is somebody who supports himself, who has held down a job, lived with me in New York. He's currently looking he moved back to Connecticut because he's moving back there and he's going to get a job there. And all the time there's this unspoken fear I think my parents have and I have that, oh, he's not doing well. What's his career going to be? What's he going to do? He's not going out. He's not having fun. He's not with friends. And, he's perfectly content. I mean, sure, I'm sure he experiences sometimes like loneliness, as we all do, normal human emotions, but he's content. And I think that this is a sign of the times. And why am I saying unmet potential? In this article, Ann Peterson recommends that burnout is the default state for all millennials. It's because we're told that everything in our lives has to be hyper optimized. This is, I think, a cultural thing. And I'm going to get more into this because I find it really interesting. But even take our rest. Even rest has to be hyper optimized. Think about what we do, athleisure, right? It's like, oh, even when I'm comfortable, I look good and I could exercise in them. Or it's like my version of rest looks like, a meditation app that really is not about rest. It's about like, clearing my head so I can do more work. And even I think about why New York, this is why New York sucks so much. Sucks so much. I'm going to get into this as of late is because, it's like, oh, ping pong at South Street Seaport. It's like, go and have ping pong. And then there's a cornhole thing. And it's like, everything has to be a hyper optimized experience. it's like that's why these experience sort of things are popping up all over New York. New York wasn't never a fucking an amusement park, but now it's like, oh no, we clearly demarcate that these are fun experiences to have. It everything has become is about optimization, and everything is about, even the fun things, because we're trying to hyper optimize everything in our lives, whether it's, grocery shopping. Well, who has time to cook? Who has time to grocery shop? These things are mundane tasks that are not that are wastes of time for me to do what? Be the best person I can be. So let's outsource that. But as a result, even fun things, even things that are enjoyable, are flattened into fucking to-do lists because we have too much we're trying to optimize in our lives. Like even take this idea of scheduling creative time. It's like, well, let me schedule my creative time, or let me schedule time to spend with the kids, or let me it's I'm not saying those things are, it's like, in this article she talks about, like, I feel like, this mother wrote on this Facebook group, she was saying, it's like, we are, it's like, I feel like we don't have the Christmas spirit this year, even though we're doing X, Y, Z, B, C, D, but everything just feels like a to-do list. And it's because, it's funny, I think my parents and generations before me, it was all about keeping up with the Joneses, right? It was all about consumerism. It's like, oh, I wanted the new car, or I wanted the bigger house, or I wanted the better job even. Actually, what's funny is I don't think that our generation has this sort of keeping up with the Joneses mentality in terms of consumerism, materialism. What our status symbol is our experience of life. Are we having the most fun? Are we living our best life? Is our career our passion? Are we monetizing our passion and only doing things that are fun and great? And are we constantly growing and developing ourselves? It's a status symbol. This idea of maximizing the potential of our lives and living the most life, as opposed to being something that's kind of a beautiful thing. I mean, it's a sign of capitalism, right? It's like it has been optimized into, or turned into some sort of game of, like, I will get the most, I will be the most efficient. It's funny. There's this person who she quotes in this article that wrote a book. It's like, we've basically been trained to be hyper efficiency is everything we're trying to do. We're trying to be the most efficient because we believe if we are the most efficient, we can enjoy life the most. And what it is it's a never ending list of shit we're trying to be efficient in. And what she says, and I just want to say this leads to avoidance of things, like that feel mundane or cannot be optimized. Returning a package, going to the post office, going to the DMV, taxes, these things which are necessary to just live, and they're part of, quote, adulting, which now feels like it's like, adulting is a thing where it's used to be like, no, this is just what it is to be a person in society. Because we can't hyper optimize these things because they don't feel like they are on a journey towards living the best, most special life we have. We don't do them. Or we postpone them, or we neglect them, or we whatever, which is why so many millennials have difficulty, like, doing basic shit. It's because if it's not in service of our purpose, it's not worth our time. Right? And this is another reason why she says, like, our default state is like, it's like millennials aren't lazy. They're not lazy. What they are is they're actually workaholics. And this is fucking true, dude. I think this is so true. And the problem is right, our work looks different, right? It's not like work doesn't look like, how it used to work, which is like I go into the office, I have X number of output. I've crunched this many numbers. Or I've done this many pages. So much of it's knowledge work. It's replying to emails, or it's strategizing about X, or it's commenting on these social media posts, because social media, as we know, is part of business, really, in so many different ways. Our work looks different, and with the pandemic, which this was written before the pandemic, it never ends. The amount of work we have to do actually never ends. The amount of labor we have to do never ends. And we feel guilty if we are not working, because we're not fulfilling our purpose, right? We're not, I think we were told that, like, our parents had jobs that they did not like, probably they just wanted to, like, play, and or it's like, it's a bummer that you have to go to work. It's like baby boomers, right? It's a bummer, you got to go to work, you got to do this. All we want to do is really, I don't know, like, go to a Led Zeppelin concert or whatever. So it's like our generation was the one that was taught, it's like, well, you can make your passion your purpose, and make your passion your like. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what it does is it completely sort of, it's just, I don't know, I don't like it. I just don't. I think it's a trick. I think it's a trick, and I think it leads to burnout. We're taught that if we feel guilty, well, why are you? You shouldn't be tired. Aren't you doing what you love? Aren't you working towards what you love? Right? It's like, you shouldn't be. Well, all you're doing all day is editing or writing, or isn't that what you want to do? You shouldn't feel tired because you're doing what you love to do. It's just this constant desire to maximize our experience. It's hard. Anyway, so, you know, and it's also, I just have to say, somehow within all this, because there is such a desire to maximize your potential as a status symbol, right? It just flattens everything we find enjoyable, and I have to say something, in recovery, right? When somebody's going through recovery, and what the 12 steps really is about. This is kind of what the 12 steps in getting sober really actually deals with. It has to deal with, you know, self-centeredness, an inflated idea of one's worth and potential, and their sort of big ideas and their pipe dreams, right? Think about, like, Iceman Cometh, right? Like, think about all those drunks, it's like all their pipe dreams, all the great things they're going to do, and all the great things. This is what leads to a over medicated, over drugged out, like, populace. And when you get sober, you're taught that if you make your bed that day, if you don't pick up that day, and if you call somebody that day, that's a great day. And that's so hard for somebody like me to take in, because it feels like all a waste, because it's not me doing something that maximizes my full everything I can offer, to the world idea. And actually, it's why I don't do any fucking service in my life. The one fucking, and I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says. We're all of service in different ways. Listen, if you're trying to make art, you're not of service. I don't give a fuck. There's too many artists in the world. It's like, that's not service. It's okay. It's not service. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's not service. It's not service. Go to a homeless shelter. Go to a fucking, you know, go go serve homeless people, or volunteer to suicide hotline. Like, I think Shirley Chisholm said, like, service is the rent we pay for being on this earth, but something that literally is giving to people, and a version of offering our fullest to people, our time, our energy. No, because it's not aligned with my passion, because it's not aligned with this cool experience of life I'm supposed to have. And again, it's like so funny. Like, think about, like, what excites us on social media. It's like the people who are like, wow, like I have like, here's my office and it's like a zany cool thing, and it's like, but it's hyper efficient, and I'm hyper efficient with my work, and then I'm hyper efficient with my rest and my sleep, and I'm able to spend all this time with my kid. It's like this obsession with being, a robot. This is why transhumanism is fucking happening now. It's like this obsession with being a robot. And where's the service? Where's the showing up for people? It's like, it's hard for me. It's like just hanging out with friends, sitting on the couch talking. If we're not trying to, you know, get to the meaning of life, or if we're not trying to, like, plot our big dreams, or talk about all the things we're going to do and strategizing, it's a waste of time. It feels like a waste of time. And that's fucking sad. I think that's really sad, because I think it's ass backwards. I think it's ass backwards. You know, and it lacks humanity. It actually is a viewpoint that lacks a lot of humanity, because, you know, I actually think it's like life isn't awe-inspiring enough. Like life isn't a gift enough. We need to maximize and optimize our place in it and make the most of it. And what does making the most of it mean? Like, does it mean living it to the does living life to the fullest mean being able to accomplish all the things I want to accomplish, and balance all the things I want to balance, and do all the things I want to do? And I don't know, dude. I just really don't know. You know, and while I'm so busy trying to meet my potential, this version of like maximizing my potential, life goes by me, and you don't enjoy things as they're happening. I just want to read this because I don't give a fuck. Our town, the best speech ever written, Emily's speech at the end. But just for a moment now, mama, we're all together. Just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another. I can't go on. It goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize all that was going on in life, and we never noticed. Take me back up the hill to my grave. But first, wait, one more look. Goodbye, goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners, Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking, and Mama's sunflowers, and food, and coffee, and new iron dresses, and hot baths, and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you are too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it every minute? You know, what if unmet potential what if the potential I need to meet is not me centered? What if it's world centered? What if it's like, the potential is in me just simply seeing this wonderful creation that's around me, as opposed to like treating my life like some sort of rag I'm trying to squeeze the most moisture out of? You know, it's all in front of me. I don't know, guys. It's hard for me. This is actually the biggest, and it has to do with my parents. Really at the end of the day, it's funny. She says this in the article. We internalize the need to find employment that reflects well on our parents, steady, decent paying, recognizable as a good job. That's also impressive to our peers at a cool company, or it's cool work, and fulfills what we've been told has been the end goal of all our childhood optimization, whether it's standardized testing, whether it's getting into a good school, whether it's, the curated activities that we had. The end goal of childhood optimization is doing work that you're passionate about. And again, I just want to say there's seemingly nothing wrong with doing work that you're passionate about. But again, what it says about your life is it's like your life is about work. That's kind of what it's about, what you do for a living. It's actually a really sneaky way of like feeding into the same. It's like, well, we all have to support ourselves and work. So the meaning of life, or the meaning of everything, is to make sure that what you have to do, this thing that you have to do, is the best it can possibly be. And it's like, look, there are people who, like, in small towns in Idaho, where it's like, they're a school teacher, or they're an accountant in town, and they die, and the whole town shows up to their funeral because they had meaningful relationships, they had meaningful connections with people, they were of service, they gave to people. I don't know, guys. I really don't know. But here's what it kind of tells me, and hopefully I'm not just rambling too much. I'm trying to fill this 20 minutes, which I've done, but it's really making me question a lot of things in my life. It's making me question everything, because art, guys, creativity, making art is not some, it's not a hyper optimized thing. It's just not like, oh, how can I be the most and get the most out of. And look, there's nothing wrong with growth, but growth takes many forms. Growth takes me having a conversation with my girlfriend, and we're disagreeing about something, and she gets through to me on something, and I go, oh wow, that's interesting, or that's where growth happens for me. Growth happens with people. It doesn't happen alone in a fucking vacuum. Growth happens to me because I'm having an existential crisis, and I hear something or read something that just makes me go, whoa. It's like, but when my whole life is so, this is why I hate to say it. The thing always, you are enough. You are enough. This used to be my least. I hated this. I hated that phrase. And this is why, because it's direct. Because no, I am not enough unless I am the most, unless I do the most, unless I have succeeded in making my life a smooth machine where I'm able to do what I love all the time and pay myself. This is what, David Foster Wallace, there's this great speech where it's like, or this great lecture he gave where it's like, sometimes I just need to stand in line at the grocery store and just wait with everybody else. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if any of this makes sense. It's highly emotional for me, guys, and I hopefully I'm doing a good job explaining stuff, but whatever. I always appreciate you guys listening. Thank you.
Hello, friendly ears and faces. Josue here, aka Joshua. I don't know if this is going to come at the top of the episode, mid-episode, or if it'll be included at all. So, Mike and I are trying something different with today's episode that is essentially all about unmet potential. Interestingly enough, this was going to be an episode that I was thinking I would record by myself. But when we were programming it, something that Mike and I have been talking about is, the time crunch of it all. And if that's essentially made up or not in a lot of ways. And so clearly this is on both of our minds. And so what we're going to do, or what we are doing, or what you have already heard, you wouldn't even be hearing this part if it was already done. But I'm recording my perspective on this idea of unmet potential. Mike is doing his, and then we're going to soldier together and get some thoughts. Period. So the reason why I was interested in this concept of unmet potential as an episode was because I guess when I think about it, it's my biggest motivator. And I say that, you hear like the questioning in my voice, because should that be my biggest motivator? Is that a negative perspective? And just to give a quick definition of this idea of unmet potential, a very basic sense, it's the gap between what I might be capable of achieving and what I've actually achieved. There's a gap. you know um and it could be a negative approach to be motivated by the fear, right, of what we can't achieve. And yet I think, and Mike, you'll be listening to this and we might talk about it, I think about Declan Donnellan and the actor in the space, and the idea of dread, and that the dread is a more helpful motivator than what I simply want. I want to make world-class art. Yes, that does motivate me. But also the potential of there being a gap between what I'm capable of achieving and what I have yet to achieve also is a huge motivator. So that's an interesting idea, right? Or question. What's the more helpful motivator in a lot of ways? And I think about this idea of potential a lot, because I want to be clear that for me this is not just about my career. This is not just about career milestones and my potential of being on Broadway or making the biggest blockbuster movie ever. I don't know why I became Maggie Smith, but R.I.P. Maggie, we love you. She certainly lived up to her potential, didn't she? But it's also about my person. And I personally believe that entrepreneurialism, and creative entrepreneurialism at that, striving for careers in the arts, requires the best of all worlds, the best of the business side of it, the career angle, but that we are operating from our best selves. So that's another element of unmet potential for me. Not just my creative output, but my person, my relationships, my health, right? And I know that I'm not operating at my highest level that I'm capable of in all areas. And it's a trigger for me. It's a trigger. And I just want to acknowledge that this is not unique to us, right? Many artists and individuals grapple with this idea of unmet potential, but it is personally one of my biggest fears, simply knowing what I am capable of. And I'm sure there's plenty I don't even know that I'm capable of that I could add on to this, but that's also very exciting to me. Right? Because I think part of what we would have to do is define potential. So I did that, unmet potential, the idea of gap, but part of what I mean is potential tangible, or is it ever evolving? Right? So how do I know if I've met my potential or not? That's a good question too. Is it based on goals? Is it based on some sort of final destination? I've achieved my potential. How do we know? Or is it the journey? Mike and I read, and we might have even heard us talk about it. We read a book by Ray Dalio. What was it called? Mike, where are you? Principles, some years ago. And he talks about how we are wired to chase challenges, right? So if we climb one mountain, we're essentially looking for the next one to climb. This relates to this idea of destination versus being in process with what it means to meet potential. Because if we take that idea that we're always going to seek out challenges, then we're sort of always on this ever evolving, unfulfilled potential train. And is that a positive? Again, what an interesting conceit here, right? Because I just want to say, for me personally, and I'm sure Mike and I will chat about this, but it doesn't scare me. It is quite helpful for me to know that I can do more and fight for it, right? But that's also an interesting idea. Again, what does it mean to do more? Is it external or internal? So external could be awards, it could be money, it could be recognition. And internal ideas of meeting potential could simply be that idea of feeling challenged or aligned with a purpose or creatively expressing yourself consistently. And I will say for me, that I I am a big process person, so knowing that I wake up every day and still fight to be an artist is um hugely successful as far as I'm concerned. And then that's one success. Then the next success is, okay, well, what do I do with that time that I'm still fighting for in a lot of ways? And when I think on I don't have a lot of regrets in my life. But I do have one big professional regret, and I have one big personal regret. I'm going to share the professional one and leave the personal for another time. But of unmet potential, specifically personal and professional unmet potential, you think I might have spoken about the dissolving of my theater company, and how that is an example of a moment where I feel like I fell short. I was just talking about this the other day. When we dissolved my theater company, I was the only vote to not dissolve it, because I did not want to dissolve it. I didn't. We owed money to a number of vendors, and besides that, I was super proud of what we had built, and I wanted to see it continue on. But where I fell short was I didn't set it up for long-term success. I learned, right? But I know that I could have been more thoughtful, more strategic, and given more time to allow for the potential of that transition, so that all the work that two cities and countless artists and donors and had put into the project, could actually see itself in some ways fully realized. Again, potential fully met. And I do think I think about that, because I think that regret, well, of course, it's a regret because I wish I'd done it differently, was a huge lesson for me. I wouldn't be doing exactly what I'm doing right now if it weren't for that experience. And what I mean by that, this podcast, the work that we talk so much about, all stemmed from those mistakes, or rather potentials not yet met. Another version of potential not met, and I've said this before too, was even something like "Ain't Too Proud," which never talk about forever and ever and ever. Okay, we get it, we did the play, but I do feel like whether it's audience growth or relationships or building and leading into other things, I did not do a great job of building on the full potential of that project, in a lot of ways. And again, it sticks with me because I go, well, what could I have done? That's why I try to get a little specific about it. And I guess this idea of unmet potential and relates to this idea, I would even argue, of death, right? The anxiety of time running out. And I guess that makes me think is there ever enough time to do all the things that we dream of? So is that value of the fear of time running out practical? Because again, if we marry this idea of always chasing challenges, one would assume that of course not. So then we're just always putting ourselves in a state of, I guess, worry, fear, right? The fear of unmet potential. And then you have to sort of ask yourself, well, what role does ambition play in this? Right? Because I think ambition, I have a lot of ambition. I think ambition is a super helpful personal tool. But there's a battle, right, between ambition and contentment, right? Striving for more and more and more, and also basking in and living in the present, right? And we live in it where we work as artists in an industry where we're constantly comparing ourselves, which you know, I would argue there's a thin line between ambition and toxic self-doubt. Michael and I, we had dinner once with Nick Blameyer and his wife Anand, and the two of them are such wonderful artists, and we were talking about how we always feel like, and by the way, we look at them and we're like, wow, they're so great, they're doing so many amazing things, and they were looking at us somewhat similarly, and we're talking how we're always feeling like we're behind. We're behind. Well, what are we behind on? Right? What are we behind if we're doing it? So it's this interesting balance of, again, that of contentment and ambition in a lot of ways. So then it goes, well, okay, well, how do I reframe the question? Will I ever reach my full potential? To maybe, am I evolving in a meaningful way? And what's helpful for me to think about that is, when it comes to ambition and my professional pursuits, I do have examples of things that I want to achieve, even things simply, I want to create blank, right? Not about like, I want a Tony Award, fine, but based on that, that's what I want. That's a pretty metric, right? Because I really would be based on the show that I was creating, right? So again, I'm just waffling back and forth on this idea of what it means to reach potential versus being mid process, right? Process over product, right? Fulfillment comes from doing the work, not just achieving the specific result. I think all these questions I have. And I think for Mike and I'm excited to listen to his. Focusing on living in the moment is money, right? Because art, right, it isn't just about legacy. I think we often set long-term goals. I want to create an artistic legacy. Well, also, what is that? But instead of just the daily act of creating, so that maybe potential isn't something to meet, but something to explore and expand upon. And I said just a few minutes ago, this idea of me waking up every day and fighting to be an artist is, as far as I'm concerned, is a huge friggin' success. Therefore, if you are out there and you are actively making and learning and striving, let's be clear, you're already on that path of fulfilling your potential. This has been helpful for me. Thanks. Send you my therapy bill. No, but just musing on this, because I do believe this is a huge motivator, the idea of not meeting my potential, but the potential is actually based in the day-to-day and the process of it. So do I actually get more micro with my personal and professional potentials and name some of what I believe they to be, not necessarily again in the long term, or if I do, I could break them down, what that mean, what does that mean for now? And then bask in, again, I like that word, but basking in the potential of my process, of my ever evolving process of taking care of myself, growing as a person, making the things that I want to make. And going back to this idea of Ray Dalio and seeking out challenges, you know what that does for me is it asks me to live in the positive. And what I mean by that is if I shift my focus from potential being external, maybe a bit impersonal, fear-based, and instead lean into, again, the day-to-day, knowing there will be challenges, knowing that it's going to be hard, then do I actually find a great deal of joy in that. Sorry for the pause. I'm just thinking about this because I think I do a lot of this already, meaning I accept a lot of the challenges that are put before me, and I fight so hard to maintain a positive mindset because I personally am unable to work from a place of everything I'm lacking or, oh, I don't want to do this or I can't do it. So I think I do live in some of this space to some extent, accepting that the process is going to be uniquely challenging. But I wonder, based on this conversation with myself, LOL, if I could go further with it. And again, reshape this idea of even unmet potential to something that relates to process more than the end, to how I wake up tomorrow and fight to be an artist. Period. Interesting food for thought. Helpful for me. And honestly, I'll say just for my little section here, I wasn't imagining this to be quite as reflective or based on or leaning into the idea of process, because unmet potential simply I did see at the end of my life. And in reflecting back, did I meet my fullest potential? But, and thanks for bearing with all my esotericism. Is that a word? But I'm a big intention person. So, meaning, if my intention is to do X, Y, Z, whatever that thing is I'm trying to do, then, and I'm doing it, I'm fighting to do it, then have I met my potential of the moment? And no matter where I end up at the end of my life, if I've committed to staying present and evolving to meet my best potential simply day to day as a person, as an artist, does that unlock the potential? And at the end, do I reflect on the power of that? Well, time will only tell. And seeing as how I'm a young 26, who knows what that will be? Mercy.
Not famous, but known.
I was about to say, where'd you get that?
I don't know.
How long have you had it? It seems like it's like an item. It doesn't seem like it's like oh, that was like an item that you got.
It was just upstairs.
No, but okay.
Like
Yeah,
I didn't. I no. I didn't go to like a Cristal event and like someone
yeah,
handed
I
it to
don't know.
me.
It seems like, or like it's like, oh, that was Charlie XCX's, like,
Oh,
I
no,
don't
no,
know.
no.
There's some bullshit. I don't know.
I don't even know who Charlie XCX is. I mean, I do because of
She's
Troy
great.
Sivan, and like but I don't really like her energy. I like um Chappell Roan much more, and I sort of like lump them together.
That's funny because their music is different. Yeah, I get. Yeah. Anyway, so okay, so you listened to mine, and I listened to yours, and
Yes.
we talked about unmet potential,
Yes.
and it was. I like always before in the macro sense, you were like you were like, well, you think it's bad, and I think it's potentially good. And but that's what I was interested listening to yours because I was interested because I don't think it was
I
like,
don't actually remember what I said, to be honest with you, to be 100%.
well, I think you were sort of questioning,
I do remember that. Yes.
what it actually is because, is it more in the like what I took away? Here's the main point that I took away from what you were saying, which you kept talking about process. And what I understood you saying was that, like, I like you said, potential is something to explore and expand upon, not to meet. It is a way to make your life more fulfilling. So, like, is that the process, right? So is when you're talking about potential as process and not necessarily achievements, you know, is it actually about the day to day sort of like not what I'm able to accomplish, but the energy I'm putting into something and the quality of work I'm putting into something? Is that sort of what you meant? It,
Yeah, I mean, because I was thinking about this in therapy yesterday. I I feel better about. I don't know if you feel this way about therapy, but I feel better about problems in my life when I am working on them and in process. Like it, but and this goes back to this idea of striving for perfection and embracing imperfection. What am I striving for? Why am I going to therapy? Why am I making these scrambled eggs? Why am I doing anything in my life? And it's kind of so for me, call me sucked up in the millennial bubble, right? Because it's funny, like that's why when I simplify this idea of bad, you think it's bad and da da da. I was listening to yours again and I was thinking, well, what's wrong with optimization? What's wrong with striving for your highest sense of self? um and that's where, though, just to bring it back to process specifically, me being in process of striving for becoming my best self, not just professionally. That's what I was trying to say too,
mm,
was like just me. And Mike, this has been a truth for me. This is helpful to so much to talk about this, because this has always been a truth for me. In always, when I go to the doctor and they wanted to give me a night guard because I bit my teeth, I was like, well, when do I stop wearing it? And they said, you don't. And I said, well, what do you mean? You want me to wear this for the rest of my life? And they said, well, you're grinding your teeth at night. I said, well, why am I grinding my teeth? And they said, well, it could be because of stress. It could be, hold. Well, there's the root cause. I don't need to put, now listen, I'm wearing the night guard, but the truth is that that's what I'm interested in fixing, the stress causing the grinding. And that to me is something that I really value, is, being in that process. And I was fascinated hearing your side of that concept of nonstop optimization in all areas of life, teeth, career, da, 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 being a burden instead
well,
of an inspiration.
yeah, I think with the point you're and that look, at the end of the day, it's what makes somebody happy, right? I The reason why I don't think it's helpful for me, well, this is why our generation, in my opinion, is burned out. This is why our generation has difficulty, has decision fatigue, why we
Mhm.
have difficulty adulting, why we're, why, it's because our, we are constant things like health, things like going to the grocery store, going to the post, doing the daily things that make up a life. If they're not sexy enough, if they're not special enough, if they're not, we find it difficult to do. And
Is that what makes up a life?
well, what makes up a
Because
yeah.
well, yeah, I
Well,
mean,
is a
that's
life made up of speculation? Because that's the thing, right? What like unmet potential is all about speculation, which is, I'm not saying there's, again, I don't think it's all bad or all good. I think that I think like is life ignoring what's around you, not living in the present because you're trying to speculate on
but see, that's an
a
extreme,
future
isn't it?
life. Well,
Isn't that
no,
not an extreme?
wait, well, yeah, I think
Meaning,
that's the
meaning that if I may, that's it is definitely one perspective, and I'm not actually saying you're wrong. I'm actually not saying you're wrong. I just think that's fascinating that your perception of it is that you ignore the things around you, because I guess that's just not how I interpret. Because if I may, in fact, for you, that could be a huge part of the fullness and wholeness of your person that has to be accounted for and prioritized. Whatever that idea of like going to the post, who the hell knows? And all I'm saying is that I don't know if that has to be separate from, if I may, and I could be totally wrong about this, but I was thinking about this earlier this morning when I was re-listening to yours. Part of what I was hearing, and where I actually really am, I'm on the same page with you about, is seemingly wanting something slower and simpler day to day, meaning just life to be a bit simpler than than what is put in front of us. Does that feel true to you?
well, what, and that's the thing. Well, not even necessarily what's put in front of us. It's the stakes we're creating, right? It's like these are stakes. When I think about the stakes of life, like there are some very basic stakes of life. Being able to support yourself, being able to being able to support yourself and being healthy. Those are the stakes of life. Everything else is made up stakes, which is fine. I'm not saying that that's bad, but everything else is made up stakes. It's a
Being able to support yourself. Let's just take that, because what does that even mean? Because this is what I mean by simpler. Like, what you mean, like, oh, I meet my base minimum. Well, okay. But then this is, and I said this actually when I listened to this the first time, I sent you this voice memo, because part of what was coming up for me in listening and hearing you reflect was the lens of a entrepreneur, of someone being like, well, I don't know if I want to do that, because I think
sure.
there are millions of people who live a very simple life that are more than happy to just do the day to day.
Yeah.
And I think that what what it seemed like you were partially talking about is people who are looking for more. A lot of times those people, it could be, I hear you about the millennial generation thing, that's makes sense, is one lens. And subsequently, if I may, a lot of those people are chasing their own efforts. Therefore, this idea of unmet potential, when held up against the idea of you achieving something independently, if that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Well, and I guess when you say more, it's a version of more. Life's mores can look like many things. There are, you know, living
Exactly.
living more, wanting more could look like wanting more of a deeper, day to day sort of existence with people around you. It could mean wanting to, build something, or dedicate yourself to a dream. That's one version. So more looks like a bunch of different things. And I guess for me, what I'm trying to say here is that the reason why I don't think it's helpful for me is because my experience with it is, per your point about fear, I think it is. I think it is sort of a fear driven thing more than anything.
That Declan Dolan idea was interesting, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was good. I thought you were exactly
because
right.
because the whole point is like it's the motivator. So then you go, well, what motivates you? But part of what I hear you saying is, yeah, well, do you need a motivation?
Well, I guess yes, that's one thing. Is do you need a motivation, but also like, absolute. I agree that it's a fear is a great when I'm living like, and this is, God damn it, why fear is why he's so right is because sort of like in our day-to-day animalistic existence, the human, I believe, and I thought that was interesting that you bring it back to fear of death, right? And I think that something has really changed in me where I'm like, I've sort of come to some peace around death in a lot of ways because I sort of had this awakening, this idea of like, because I've been terrified of death my whole life and like really, really terrified of it.
Interesting.
And I'm not afraid of it as much anymore. And so it's kind of taken the pressure off of me because I'm like, oh, it's like, I to make a long story short, death will be perfect. How could it not be perfect? Because it's just the way things are. It's like a fish going, if you try to fight what is, then it's probably not going to be a good experience. But it's like a fish going back to water because it's just part of life. It must be. And like listening to a lot of people have gone through near-death experiences, it must just be like a beautiful, wonderful experience. And it must be perfect because that's ultimately where we spend all of eternity, is in that state. So it must just be a perfect thing. And I say this because, this is a moment in time. Like, me in this world is a moment. It's just a manifestation. I'm just passing through. And so kind of the question is okay, while I'm passing through, what am I doing here?
Exactly.
And so am I, and this brings me back to it's funny, we were watching The Traitors and it was like, I was like, this is life. Like The Traitors is life. Like life is a game of, it's all, and if you like listen to top, scientists about like who are like really into simulation theory, that we're living in a simulation, it's like all life is made up games. That's all life is. As humans, as we've discovered more leisure, right, we make up bigger and bigger games where the stakes could be like the promotion, where the stakes could be like fame, where the stakes could be nuclear war. Like we just constantly make up games for ourselves. And so like while I am here, is the point of my life to kind of, per Declan Donnellan's point, why that's a useful point, is just kind of dive into the game of life and like play this sort of game, or is like and achieve and be the best at it and do the most at it, or is it something else? That's kind
And
of
what's
how I'm
the else? Because let me give you context. Over my brief 38 years, one of the things that obviously we talk about and I reflect a lot on is capitalism and the ongoing effects of it. And I think we have really been seeing it and manifest. I mean, that's 100%. I was looking at the videos of Trump and Elon with the cars outside the White House and him getting out. I mean, it's capitalism at its finest. You know what I mean? The
Yes.
notes with the costs of the cars. So, and by the way, that's what, to be honest with you, that's what I heard the bulk of your portion really railing against.
Yeah, that hyper optimization really
yes,
is sort of
yes,
like a late
yes.
stage capitalistic
Exactly.
sort of.
And why am I rambling on about this? Because when we talk about like what we part of this idea of what we're here to do, it's like you've heard me say this. What fight am I here to fight?
Yeah.
It's the same idea. Where am I putting my energy? There is so much about obvious. I think everybody in the world could practically agree that there's plenty about capitalism that is destroying us in a lot of ways. Maybe some people will lie and say it's not
Well,
true,
and
but
not
it's
working
destroying
at the,
us.
and I don't think it'll
Exactly.
work at the end of the day. Unfortunately, I think
Exactly.
China's gonna win, even though they have a capitalistic system, basically.
But when I go back to this question for you, though, about okay, so then what else? This is what I'm left with. Do I ride alongside the belly of the beast, or ride inside the belly of the beast, and just sort of dodge the as best I can the nightmarish elements that will try to bring me down, so that I can do the best of what I can, or which is the route I am currently on and have been on for a long time and have been aware of, by the way. Like it's not like I'm like delusional with, whether it's socials or just the whole movement online entirely, or the politics of it. I mean, there's so many elements of it that I just can't absorb. Now, what I hear you though saying is like, you're like, well, fuck the system. Fuck the system that's telling us we have to do this. And instead, let me do blank. And I think that's my question.
yeah, and that's
right?
the thing, is maybe there is no answer, which is not comfortable. Maybe there's not quite, like, let me tell you, and this kind of comes back to a big issue I've been having.
Mhm.
Why I think this unmet potential thing has hurt me a little bit over the
Mhm.
past couple years, especially. It's because ultimately, things like health, when you and I talk about health, especially, it's not like in my opinion, it's not it's not a optimization sort of, like, it's just like, how do I optimize my health? And it's like,
But you know what that
it's,
means? Isn't that interesting? Because you know what that means, right? Like like you understand that's like at least for me, that's not the. I know what you're saying as a means to an end, but I'm not
but what I'm
tracking like
trying to say
the
is, like,
blanket over it.
the blanket overarching thing is, I'm trying, if everything I touch has to be optimized, nothing's going to be optimized.
Yes.
So that's a problem. It's like, if in my opinion, if that doesn't make any sense to me to try and be, and I think it's kind of, I think one of the reasons why I am, and I'm not saying it's my fault, why I'm probably in the worst health of my life currently, is because it's not enticing enough of an thing to optimize. It's just not, it's like, it's not, when I'm so focused on my unmet potential, the little things like grocery shopping, like cooking a meal, like going on a walk, or just simple things that don't feed some sort of larger, that
Right.
don't feed a larger vision, seem pointless to me or useless to me, because they're not sexy enough or exciting enough, or it's like I have a conversation with somebody, and I don't have this problem anymore, but it's like, oh, if this conversation isn't serving some sort of bigger goal I have or dream I have, it's a pointless conversation. And
Right.
so I think, and that's what I mean by it's all speculate. Like, you're living in speculation, which is not anything. I'm not completely saying don't have dreams. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But it's like, you live in a
Well, yeah,
state
that's
of
what.
speculation, as opposed to in a state of actually, or me actually sort of dealing with foundational, sort of like the not sexy day to day, just like taking care of oneself. Why? Not to achieve my dreams, not to, not to do, because if that's what it's about, if it's all about like being the best self and da 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 da, like, I'll find other things to do. If that's what's driving me, it's like, why can't I just take care of
Well,
myself
what
because
other
I love
things?
myself?
What are other things that you would find to do? Because when you say that, like, if life's all about becoming my best self, I'm like, that sounds nice. So I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
yeah, for me it doesn't sound, to me it sounds like undue pressure. It sounds like
Right.
I'm, for some reason I'm creating um a pressure that doesn't even need to be there. Why do I have to, because, and by the way, I'm not saying, it sounds like I'm saying like growth is bad, uh, but I guess the problem I have, just to sum it up, is that, like, why can't I take care of myself because I just love myself? Why does it have to be to sort of maximize, make sure I'm of ultimate use and of ultimate optimization, and so I'm the best version? Why can't I just take care of myself because I love myself? It's kind of like and because I want to take care of myself. It's like, where's that sort of unconditional love element of it all? It's like, well, no, it's, I'm not worth shit unless I'm doing the most at everything. And that's why.
Well, okay, but if I may, this is, and I know you know this, but that isn't an absolute extreme.
Sure, that's how I feel when I engage
Right.
with this idea.
Right.
That's how
Right.
I feel
Heard.
when I engage with this idea, because it's, yeah, and I'm not saying that other people can't deal with it in a healthy way. I'm sure they can. It's that, it's like, I watched Sunday. I said we binge watched 6 episodes of The Traitors. I haven't binge watched a
Mhm.
show in years. And I felt so bad. I felt terrible for doing that. It's like, because I shouldn't be, because it's like every moment of my life should be going towards my purpose, or and it's like, it it upsets me because it
Well,
takes away from the quality of my life.
Well, you know what? In a lot of ways, if I may, as this is for the podcast listeners, but it's as much for you as and I. One of the things that I value about you, and I think that this coming up is values. Let me be clear. And I think there are two ideas that there are two pieces of you that are both so true, and might be fighting. And let me be clear what I mean. There's this loving, I want to have a family. I want to sit at a lake with my 3 kids and relax. You know what I mean? Like live the life that, like, with, I'm, you're a very family oriented person. You're very loyal. You you want to have fun. To the point of undue pressure. I think, like, you are impulsive and free. It's why you're such a. I was maybe feral. That's why you're such a good actor. You are so impulsive and free, and you don't want to worry about all the bullshit. Then on the opposite end too, you're sharp and smart and ambitious and talented, and want to, and know that you can achieve just about anything you want to if you were to put your mind to it, because you just know that about yourself and you have the skill sets. And these two things are, like, to your point, trying to run alongside each other. And I guess the question is, that is there a convergence? Because if I may, to be quite candid, and this can't be shocked to anyone listening or watching, obviously I've long lived in the other, the ambitious side of things. And as I read my book, Mike, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, How to Heal from Distant, Rejecting, or Self-Involved Parents, I'm learning a lot about how that translates to this ambitious side of things. And I'm saying this, though, because it feels like, this is where I'm sorry, I'm a little rambly, but this is my point about the idea of entrepreneurialism, and these two things not feeling like they can converge, because there's so much sacrifice required. As we know, that's always been the case. That's nothing new. There's always so much sacrifice required when you are building your own beast, so to speak, to fill the rest of the beast. And it feels like right now you're saying, like, I gotta let this other piece go for at least a bit, because the other piece that has all those values that I value, that I wish I valued even more, and that you can
Yeah, no,
feed that a
I
bit.
think it's a fair point. It's like, I'm, well, what it really is, right, is like, this all stems from, I think about, I'll bleep his name, who's probably one of the best actors
Yeah, it's
I've
great.
ever seen. and he teaches high school. He teaches, I think, drama high school in North Carolina. And I think that's what he does. He's been in a couple movies. He he works here or there, which is kind of wild, but that's what he does. He's a high school drama teacher, I think. And it's fucked up that my mind goes to like, oh, what a waste. Like, what a waste that's what he's doing. That someone of that much talent and that much, because none of it matters, dude. I mean, that's sort of what I guess I'm real. It's like in a million years, none of it matters. And in a worldwide impact that lasts through Marlon Brando or Julius Caesar, or these people, like in the scheme of the universe, their impact is just as big as that guy's impact with his high school like drama kids. Like the impact,
Sure.
the size of the
Yes.
impact is the same. It's
I will. I will say though, I did take a little bit of umbrage with this idea of art not being of service. I understand what you're saying, but it's funny. This is so small, but first of all, when I used to work with the developmentally disabled, part of what I did was go in and play music for them, and then I used to do it at senior
I think
citizen
that's
centers,
wonderful.
and but it never. It's funny. It even the senior citizens home, I was paid for both, and I paid well for both of those.
Yeah,
And
I think that's
and
great.
but I'm saying it because I you were saying like go serve at a kitchen, and it's like yes,
Or go
but
serve
also
with your art. I love that idea. What I'm saying is like, basically, we are all on this path, and that's the thing, is it better of a path to be on than like, being like a serf in Russia, like, 200 years ago? Yes. But like, we're all on a path where I feel like the most out of our lives, and we want to achieve the most, like like have the most, like that's the thing. It's so funny, right? Even like when we're reading or when we're meditating, it's like not to actually rest, or it's to better ourselves, it's to be great. Everything has to be, and I think that there's this spin where it's like to justify, and why I think we're kind of miserable as a generation is because we try to spin it to be like, well, if I do that, it will help everybody, which I don't think is true. It's like you help people by doing service, however it looks like, by doing true service, however it looks like, in whatever way. But I think like we're actually also desperate for connection, that we try to spin this idea, well, if I'm my best self and I can achieve all of my potential, that will somehow be of service to others, because it will. And we're not a very service oriented generation, I would say, because it doesn't feel like it's serving some sort of larger thing we're trying to do, or at least for me.
I think it's pretty clear by now that I'm and spending so much time with you over the years that I've learned this more, although I think I would have already always prescribed to this, that I'm an institutionalist in a lot of ways. I do believe in institutions. I believe in their usefulness for society. I believe in their use. So like as the world changes, as AI, grows and adapts, institutions are needed. I think we need a Department of Education. I think we need institutions in place to take care of the people. Subsequently, to be honest with you, the truth is that of course I sort of buy in, um, hook, line, and sinker, right? And because to your point, you're making a great point. How do I continue to play into the system that tells me if I'm online and I'm doing all the shit that I'm still I'm a part of the greater world, and that's making me whole and a part of something, when in fact, per your point, it's just an ongoing pressure. But then here's where I'm there's two questions that I have,
Yeah.
and why I respect you for not only naming your opinions but leaning into the idea of it. what's on the other side if you don't play into the system.
Fair enough.
And
Or if you don't play the game of life, which I would say, when you say the system, I just want to be clear. It's like playing the game, because I would say anti-institutionalist, Elon Musk is playing the game of life. You know what I mean? It's like playing the game, winning at life. That's the winning at the game of life is sort of when you say play into the system, that's sort of, which is sort of like, okay, like it's not enough to just, be housed to and to like be able to feed myself and be healthy. Like, no, it needs to be my life needs to be this full experience where I achieve things and I did it. That's like the game of life, I would say.
right.
So
Yeah.
so what's on the other side if you don't play that game of life?
Well, yeah, because I mean, I'll just take even in this moment as an example per many of our conversations. If I have any number of X, Y, or Z responsibilities, whether that is just in this current moment, whether it's our stuff together or other companies that I'm involved in, or health responsibilities, financial whatever. There's a bunch of responsibilities, and I'm sort of left, and things that are in the fire, right, cooking along, going. And the question is what does it look like to, this is what I keep saying, what's the other? What does it look like to step away from living in the state of the pressure of not meeting your fullest potential, as what you are saying, and I don't think you're wrong, by the way, put upon us by society
Well, just
and
to
late
be
stage
clear,
capitalism.
here's what I think it changes. I think that you're probably not going to be having as many things going on, which might lead to, look, like that's the thing, right? That's, there's trade-offs. So like, a trade-off could be like, you're not doing 400 different things. That could be a trade-off, is that you're not as, you're not as busy doing all these different things. Some of these things maybe are let go because, I don't know how many of these things you are doing out of pure joy, how much you're doing for, to sort of explode to the next level or whatever the fuck. Right. So it probably means that you have less things going on, I would argue. I'm not going to sit here and pretend. And that's why for me, and I will continue to answer this question, the sort of emperor has no clothes mentality of that I've had recently about like, oh, well, I don't really, it's there. I don't give a shit as much anymore about sort of like big success anymore. Cause I'm like, what does that even mean? It's just like, how is that, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Live your life, queen. Yes, whatever. But taking
But here's
away,
my, can I ask you a question? Because like this, because we've been talking a version of this for a few weeks. So like, what are your days now? Like, what do you, like when you, like, what do you do? And I'm really serious about this
well,
because
nonstop edit our podcast. But but it's funny that you're asking this question because
I know.
I mean, it's like what do my days consist of? Editing this podcast, I'm looking for a little side hustle right now. So looking for a little side hustle. I'm trying to develop this educational program for this theater company. But also it does look like, getting ready for this play. So reading the play, reading the book. But even this idea of that question. So they've been busy days.
I know.
But even the idea of this question is like, well, what are your days? It's like, well, if it was just me sitting around, like,
But see, that's just for what it's worth. That's how you heard it. I know why you hear it that way. I understand why you hear it that way. But it's just, I
no,
think
sure.
the point that I'm,
Well,
is
what's
it's a bit of
behind
a
that
lens.
question? I guess.
Well, I guess it's like, well, I don't know the difference between what you're that day and any other day. Like what is, because I hear the reflection on the, when I hear you say sustain myself or like get by or whatever you said at the beginning, like I just want to be healthy and I just want to make enough to live. If I may, those are goals, right? Unto themselves,
Absolutely.
simple goals, simple. But that's what I mean, simple. Not In which case, by the way, to your point, okay, well, if starting my own thing, insert whatever, I make lamps, I make pencil sharpeners, I'm a painter. It doesn't matter. Oh, that's not making me money. Okay, I'm gonna go work at the candy shop. That's good. And I think this is kind of what I'm asking is like, what does this change in an approach to, I guess, life, or what we have been, you and I have been so focused on.
Well, it's
for
a
so
good
long.
question. Look, and I appreciate that. It's like it's coming down to like, I would say it's been a couple of weeks it's been a couple of weeks I've experienced this, so I haven't maybe some of these changes have not been experienced as of late, or implemented yet. And what it looks like to me is, in the very real practical sense, is there are times where, it comes up a lot with our work. It's like, I spent 4 hours editing something yesterday or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I can get the reel out too, or I can get this. And that used to be something that would, oh, like, well, I can also do this, or I can get this done too, or I can get. And it's like, more and more I'm like, no, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't. I'm done. I'm just done. I'm done with that. It's like this sort of trying to drive myself to be like, that I don't have to do the most at everything I touch. And because that's sort of kind of, I'm experiencing that more. It's like, I don't have to be, or even like prepping this play. Look, I'll be honest with you. This is probably, and I don't mind saying it, the least prepared I've been walking into a rehearsal process. And the least quote prepared, whatever prepared means. It's like funny because now I'm even like, well, what does even being prepared for a rehearsal mean? But this is I read the play. I've read the play once, and I'm working through the book. Haven't really thought much about it going into this rehearsal process. And it's funny because this would be a moment where I would feel shame. I would feel, because isn't this what I want to do? Isn't this what I want to do? Shouldn't I be working my ass off on what I want to do? Well, then I must not really want to do it if I'm not working my ass off at it. And I just don't look at it that way anymore, because, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. Like, think about Marlon Brando. Okay. Like, Marlon Brando didn't work hard at all. Marlon Brando was not a hard worker. Marlon Brando did not and yet he was, the quote greatest actor of his time. And it's like, why am I thinking, because I can control my work, right? Because I can control the amount of work I put into something. So it feels like I have more of control of my life if I work harder at something. And I guess what's going away is this sort of desire to prove something to myself by going harder at something if I don't want to go hard at it. That's kind of what's going away a bit, if that makes sense. Like, even take, the projects I have in development, it's like, or that I'm working on, like, just because I'm not dedicating, I'm at a moment in my life where it's hard for me to dedicate time to these things. And sometimes you're just in that moment in your life. Sometimes you are just in that moment of your life. And that is kind of a powerless position to take. Yes, but sometimes in life you are powerless. And it's like, sometimes in life the cards don't line up correctly. But I'm not going to abuse myself. It doesn't make sense to abuse myself and be miserable and feel guilty because I'm not figuring out, in the midst of all this other shit I have to do, how I'm going to move these projects forward. So I'm feeling more patient with myself. I'm feeling more forgiving of myself. I'm feeling less shame.
Good.
and it comes down to control for me, right? It comes down to like, there are some elements of my life I cannot control, and there are certainly elements I can control. And it's making me realize, like the final thing I'll say about it is like, yes, I have been focusing more on my health lately, because I'm like, everything else is a distraction. Anything else I'm doing right now is kind of a distraction between, paying my bills and making sure I'm in, making sure I'm not like in, like, that I'm healthy. Everything at this moment in time, kind of everything else is a distraction. Whether it's acting work, whether it's frankly this, whether it's self-produced projects, everything else is kind of a distraction from like these core foundational things that I need to take care of at this moment. That's kind of how I feel.
I mean, I don't I don't say this at all because I love, first of all, snap, 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 snap. Really, like I think that's really, I think we could all use more of that. But this is I don't know if this is going to come out wrong or not. Just sounds like you're feeling a little depressed. And let me be clear what I mean by that. I'm not trying to minimize it. It's when you talk about the basics of it, like when I'm listening to this, I hear what you're saying, but and it makes, actually, just to be clear, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and if you don't prescribe to that, just
Oh
like,
no, I think I am. And where's the depression coming from? Right? Where
No,
is where is it
exactly.
coming from? Right?
No, but here's why I'm bringing it up, and again, that's not a judgment. I'm
No, I think you're right. I
naming
think
it.
I certainly am a little depressed. I think that's correct.
I'm naming it because I think the big thing for me is the lens in which in which we take in pressures.
I completely agree with that.
And so, because I really am hearing you and reflecting for myself, as I even was in the first part of what I was saying, which was, what is potential? How do you know you've met your potential? So therefore, if you're constantly in this state of trying to achieve potential, then do you just embrace process and then practically in some ways just stay moment to moment? But then, if I may, this comes back to a lot of what we say about goals as direction. It's not so much about, and it's all nuanced and a bit complex. And again, there's these filters in which we have to consider things, because me trying to optimize or become my best self might have some core, oh, well, if, I hypothesize, I think me making this up, okay, my TMJ, the grinding. Well, let me get at the stress. Let me try to understand what's emotionally and psychically along with my teeth grinding.
Sure.
Now, but not just because I want to be a perfect Elon Musk, but because
or you want to be like a perfect like, you want to be like a transhumanist, like half cyborg, like being able to like, but because because you believe it's going to make your life full.
Well, because I want my teeth to feel good. I want my stomach to feel nice. I want my eyes to be healthy. I want to, so, and if I may, and actually let's just take health as an example. And because, I've been following this guy, Brian Johnson. Have you been, actually, this is a good, interesting example. Do you know Brian Johnson, the guy who's trying not to die?
Oh, no, I don't.
He spends millions of dollars trying to de-age himself. You got to look him up. He's blowing up right now. You should watch the documentary on Netflix. So his whole life is about optimizing his absolute health. And the point is so that he can live for as long as he wants. Now, that's not that is not like, living forever is not interesting to me. Happy to die one day, like happy to die. But those are core metrics that have tangible goals, and not to I'm so sorry, but the health thing is a big, our bodies are the most, the human bodies are the most amazing machines in the entire world. And I do get frustrated with myself when I don't treat it.
I agree
as
with
well,
that.
nearly as well as
And
I
the
could.
question is why are you not doing it? It's like, I because when you say these ideas about pressures, and I agree with you, life is going to throw pressures at you, and it's all about your mindset. But sometimes with this idea of unmet potential, not only am I taking in life's pressures and trying to have a good mindset, but now I am purposefully going out and grabbing other pressures to bring to myself. So I'm grabbing pressures, bringing them to me and going like, well, have a good mindset about this pressure I'm imposing on myself
Yeah.
to try and meet some metric that's not real, because it's made up. It's a made up metric, which I'm
Well,
not saying devalues it.
but wait, no, sorry. Health med. You're going beyond the health.
Well,
You're
I'm
saying,
going
why do I
like
want
this
to be
idea of
healthy?
being my best self is made up. That's a made up concept. We have no, you have nobody has any idea what being their best self
No,
means.
but you could take some guesses. You could say, I'd like to have a bigger circle of friends. I'd like to lose 30 pounds. I would like to be in a better mental
Well, this is
state
a
when
little
I.
different. Well, see, this is a little different the way you're positing this.
Well, what's the difference?
The difference is that being my best self and wanting a bigger circle of friends, well, what's the root cause of that? Is it because it will make me better, or is it because I just want more friends? Those are two different things.
Well, because we know that that's an important part of
But do you
of
see what I'm
living a
saying when it
healthy.
comes to the motivation of like,
Well, yes,
I
but
want to
that's a
have more
diff.
friends so I could be better, as opposed to I just want more friends in my life, and it doesn't need to have a reason, or it doesn't need to have some sort of end metric. It's just that I just want to be around more people, and that's
Of
okay.
course,
That it's, or I just want to be healthy because I
yes.
don't like the way I feel, which is, look, this is for me. It's because I don't like the way I feel. But then what happens a lot of times with me in health is that, well, how do I do it? Well, it's not enough to just feel good. It's not enough to just feel better. That's not enough. It needs to be whoop.
Well,
It needs to be
you
this.
know the underlying theme for me in all of our conversations as of late, and probably in many of these podcast episodes, is simply this idea of not being told what to think or believe. This is a running theme
Yeah.
of uh, wanting to break free of what people tell you should believe or want. And I'm saying this because you just said it. It's like, what's the motivator? I do think, to be quite candid, that I might have drunk the Kool-Aid here a bit in terms of that's not what I think of as the motivator. I do think that per your, and I do want to read this article. I hope you'll share it with me, because I think I am a perfect example of what this person is talking about. About the millennial burnout, and maybe have even fooled myself into my own
But or
motivation.
not, or not. It's like, or it makes you happy, or you're genuinely happy, or you genuinely, and I'm not saying happiness means all the time. You may have a much better relationship with it in terms of like, I mean, life is going to be different for everybody. And that's the thing. It's
Sure.
like life is not a linear process or a linear, there are no secrets. It's like
Well, this is my point. I'm so sorry. You're getting at the big. This is why I'm saying no one is making you do these things.
100%.
And what do I mean by that specifically? If you want to go be a dentist assistant in Michigan and who go do it, you can live your
100%.
life in the jungle.
100%.
I think part of what this is relating to is, again, I know it's not about entrepreneurialism, but the reason I keep bringing it back to that is because so much of our time and our efforts and our energy go into our independent work trying to build things. And that's because that is what, as we've talked about, and I think you'll agree, if you said, I want to, as you do, I want to be an artist for the rest of my life, well, what does that mean? And there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. Let me be clear. If you're like, oh, I want it to pay my bills. If you don't, girl, live your dreams. Write your poetry.
But here's the thing,
I
girl.
walked down the
Here's the
street and I
thing.
saw a little cat.
here's
Great.
the thing.
Beautiful. Put it on your wall.
Either way, here I am doing the entrepreneurialism dream. I'm not making art very consistently. And so it's like, what's the, I'm not making art very consistently. And so it's like,
yeah, but that's any bit.
what's the
Isn't
difference?
that not any business ever?
But
You
what's
know
the
what?
difference?
Actually, you'll appreciate. Well, let me tell you. The other day we have there's so many problems with our building, and it turns out that our fucking HVAC system was not installed correctly. We don't have a return. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We hire a contractor to come. This will relate, I promise. We hire a contractor off of some website to come and do a consult. Comes and looks, oh, it's all wrong. And he thought you could tell he thought we had money. LOL. Little did he know. And so he goes, so as he's leaving, he goes, and I want to tell you about something. He goes, like, I have this product. And make a long story short, Mike, filters around the world are all different sizes, and you never quite know what filters for different systems. He's invented something that basically is one size fits all that you can assemble in parts all across the world. And he's like, I only need $300,000, and he's pulling up the patent and pictures. And what's my point? He started this 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And it's been 5 years of you think he's selling the product yet? You think he's raking in the dough? No. You think it's like literally him, and I respect him. He's like out here just trying to be like, I'm taking these consults. Maybe I'll find an investor, to help get this thing really going. What's my point? When you say, am I making a lot of? Well, first of all, I think you are, but that's my perspective. I know what you mean. Your own creative work. But at the same time, that's kind of that's the nature of what business is. You're not going to be, as we always say, making pies in the back, throwing blueberries in the air, catching them in your mouth, singing your songs and doling them out to customers and have $1.5 million in the bank just because you wanted to make pies. There's going to be upfront work needed. And this is where I think, and I respect that this idea of entrepreneurialism, and I'm not saying you're not saying it's not for you, but I do respect that for a lot of people, it's like, I don't want to deal with those pressures that are part of this overarching system that low key is fucking us all. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. And it's like, look, it's fascinating, right? Because there's nothing, that guy, God love him. And I'm not saying that he's doing anything wrong. I'm saying, like, but it's not anything, it's because, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with pursuing your dreams. But, it's like, I look, how I really see it. I'll be honest with you. Where my mind's going more and more these days is I'm like, okay, long term, let me build this educational program for this theater company, make X amount of money, enough to support myself. Let me move to Connecticut and start it, and maybe if I have to have another job, so be it. But let me move to Connecticut and start a theater. Now, look, that's still an entrepreneurial dream. That still is a speculative dream. You're muted. I don't know why that keeps happening.
No clue. That latter part, by the way, sounds like the most difficult thing. Like that last part to me.
Yeah.
Whew.
But it's like, what's funny is, I guess, is it's funny, right?
Because just in part of this, I just want to say about that. Okay, first show done. You raised the $36,000. We do Three Little Pigs. Everyone loves it. They're a star. I was going to make a joke about pigs, but I'm not, because you got mad at me the other day. I said elephant. I was talking about the movie.
Care.
You really just go there.
I know. I'm fat. It doesn't matter.
Anyway, you raised the money, and then it's a huge hit. And I'm just saying, okay, then what? And it's the same. It's the same game.
You know what? You're so right. It is the same game. But what's different for me? And maybe this actually has nothing to do with dreams. Right? Maybe this really has nothing to do with dreams or unmet potential. It has to do with, like, that would be fun. That would be a fun process to go through. That would be a fun. It would be very hard and challenging. It'd be full of pressures, and it would. But that would be a fun process to sort of dedicate my time to. And if I don't achieve it, that's okay. It's like that's okay. And but I guess what's sort of maybe what we're sort of coming to a conclusion on here is that, like, I'm not saying that having a dream is bad, or wanting something in your life, wanting something
I just
is
I
bad.
wish we were I wish we were I wish we were at a place in our podcasting where like we had enough where we were working with an editor and we could like MLK can pop up and be like, this is good. That'd be a good part in the video. You know
LOL.
what
Yes, it would.
I mean?
I can do
Making
an
a serious
impression.
point.
Should I do an impression?
No.
No. But it's like
No.
I'm not saying that I, it's just like I can want something. This is what's sort of changed for me. I can want something and work towards it, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be the most. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it's like all of this pressure behind it is just, to me, is what doesn't make sense anymore to me. It's like making it this because it's not going to happen unless I put myself under immense pressure to get it done.
Right.
And that everything,
But let me
yeah,
say this. Let me say this. Let me say this. There's this phrase, and you've heard me say this before, and I think about it all the time. Anything worth fighting for is exactly that. Something you fight for. And by the way, this could be for justice. This could be for a relationship. This could be for
yeah,
a book you want to write. This could be for the house you want to build. This could insert whatever you care about.
yeah,
And we've talked about this. Part of what I again value about where your perspective in all this has been, again, I would argue, fighting for something easier, simpler, less burdened and full of worry and
so that
anxiety.
because everything, because it's all just a way to prove something to myself. At the end of the day, I think that a lot of my stuff around unmet
Interesting.
potential is around self-loathing. It's around that
Interesting.
I am not good. This is not an. I am not. I mean, as gay as it sounds, I am not enough currently, and I'm only going to be enough if I work this hard, if I accomplish these things, if I'm this kind of person. That is the only way I have any worth. And that's just not true at all. Like, everybody has, because this is all a human game and it's all made up, everybody has worth. Everybody has worth as they are now, like, without having to accomplish anything. So for
For sure.
me, this unmet potential idea is not from a place of advocacy or like believing in myself, even though there is that, of course. It's more of a place of like, I am not enough unless I max out on my full potential. I wasted my life if I did
Well,
not max out on my full potential.
and I think just to, because what am I? Yes. So then what? Because I do have still in this moment have a different perspective, which
Yeah.
is without all the tangibles of these are the goals that I've met. As I know you do as well, I know what I'm capable of, and I want to look back on my life and specifically feel like I have lived up to my fullest potential. And I do want to say, Mike, specifically as an artist, because, and just to speak quite candidly, it's not that there aren't a lot of people in my life who love me, but my focus and values have always been different since the beginning. And to be honest with you, it's not even about money and capitalism. my for better and certainly for worse, the truth is that my identity as an artist is exactly that. It is my identity. Michael is the most important thing in my life. It is true, Michael is, but followed quite literally just behind by my creative work. And I've talked more openly about that because I think that, to be honest with you, can I be quite candid? I think that's a little fucked. But that's who I am.
I
And
don't know if it's fucked.
it's my truth. Well, because the truth is, and I'm sorry, I've been really therapizing myself on this podcast recently. It comes out of a lot of pain. It's not just because I'm like, here's my painting. I'm so proud. It's become something else,
Well, yeah.
and therefore, but I just want to say, beyond this system and goals and dreams and money, it's become something that is a life source for me. Period.
It's a life source for me too. I mean, look, and that's the thing. It's this is what I've wanted to do since I was 8 years old, and it's like, but I guess when I'm on my deathbed, right? When I look back
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, at the rate I'm going, it's like, what am I looking back on? I guess, like, is it about the great artistic achievements? Well, what does an artistic
Exactly.
achievement even look like? What does an artistic achievement even look like? What does it mean? I don't even, it's like, that's what I'm even questioning at this point, is what does that even, again, if I think all accomplishments, big and small, are actually the same size, it's all the same size, you know Elon Musk's accomplishments in the scheme, in reality, in the fourth dimension, are of equal size as that, like, HVAC guy. It's all the same size in this made up world we live in. It's not. But, and so when I look back, listen, I'm always going to be making shit. I'm always going to find a way to do it. I know I am. I'm going to find a way to do it. That's not the issue. But per your point, like, when I look back, am I going to look back on, like, oh, I could have done more? And that's the thing, dude, is like, look, when people look back, when you hear about deathbed shit, what are the kinds of things people look back on life, and what do they look back on life and look at? Do they look back on what they achieved, or do they look back on, like, I didn't get to know my kid enough? Or do they look back on, oh, I, like, didn't enjoy, yes, I made all of this, but I didn't enjoy any of it? Or did they look back on, I didn't even try? I didn't even
Yes.
try to go after a dream I had. It's like,
Right.
what are people actually looking back on at the end of their lives, and regretting? I don't know. I don't know.
Exactly. And again, what's interesting and what's been revealing in this whole episode for me is I think it is, and I hope for then the listeners and viewers, is a question of values. And I don't think and that's where I'm trying not to judge my own values is, Mike, I, your family's amazing. I love your family.
No, yeah.
Your mom texted me. Your Nicholas, one of my Facebook for my birthday. I think I love Zach and your dad. I just think you have an amazing family. And why do I say this? Because I think you've been raised with different values, that important values, and I you're going into rehearsals in a few days, so you go home and you spend time with your family, and
That's true.
and so it makes sense why all this other BS would challenge those values. And then, of course, if I would probably be going, whoa, 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 whoa. What am I spending so much time on
But
here?
what's been hard? I mean, look, we had what's also been hard for me about this journey is, I do have amazing family, but, like, a lot of times it is hell in this house. It
Yeah,
is hell.
yeah, yeah.
It is hell on
Hard.
earth.
I know.
So it's like, and that's not an over exaggeration. It is, because of,
And if I
uh,
may, it speaks to your values.
and
This is interesting.
so it's like, and it's
Because you could run away. You could have grown up, Mike, and you could have been like, you know what, girl, I'm good. You didn't.
sure,
You stay.
yeah. And so it's like, and I say that because my whole life there's been this pressure to be the one
Yeah.
who does something, who can achieve and be great and be all of these things. And it's funny because on this journey, and look, that's what I mean about speculation. On this journey to sort of achieve greatness, it's hard for me to even meet good. It's hard for even to meet good.
Yeah.
Like on this way to achieve greatness, like my health is shit, you know, my finances are wonky sometimes, and it's like on this way to achieve the bigger dream. Well, it's like, it's like, now look, it's a gamble. It's a gamble, right? It's a like I think about those Airbnb guys maxing out 45 credit cards, like living like in the shit, and their gamble paid off, right? And it's like, but it's funny that as I'm sort of chasing the long-term carrot sometimes, or the long-term sort of, I can't even sometimes take the step in front of me and just take the steps that are just right in front
Yeah.
of me.
Well, you're also very open about, and I don't think I'm not a master at this by any means, but I think you're very candid about your struggles to just take care of yourself. Sometimes you're like, self care is like not my, you will work harder for something or for someone else before you're like, what do I need to do for myself today? And so it also makes sense that you're like, to your point, it's like, let me get these basics down,
Yeah.
in some ways, before I start considering putting all these pressures on myself to be something that I would argue, and we've been having this conversation, require so many of the basics, which again, I am not sitting here being like, I am perfect.
No.
I've got so many of the basics out of whack myself, which is why we go back and we realign. And this is where I come back to process and all this, right?
Yeah.
Because where what I do believe is, when I was thinking about this idea of unmet potential, what the potential is a facade, kind of what you're saying. It's fake. There's no, even if the metric was, well, my potential is to make $10 million, fake. But what I need is direction.
Yeah. Something to work towards. Yeah.
And how we deal with that along the way.
I think we all do.
Question.
I think, and that's just the thing I want to say. I it's kind of like that trippy convo we had, I think, in the episode. I don't think that episode has come out yet technically, but like, I kind of do believe in predeterminism. I believe everything has happened already. I believe that, time is, happening all at the same time, and we're just experiencing it in this fashion. And so
the final episode of Creative Risk is going to be you unzipping yourself, and you're going to be an alien, and you're going to be like, I told
or it's
you.
gonna be like self-immolating. Just on fire.
Mike loves self-immolation, by the way.
I think it's fascinating. But it's like, but at the same time, and I said this in this episode, like, we were given intention. We were given, I don't think that we're here to just, meditate and be react and just be sort of open vessels entirely. I think that most of us could use a lot more of that. A lot more of that. No means to an end, just experiencing. But I don't believe that's all of life. I believe that we were given intention, and we were given, like, so I do think that, there should be direction in life, and period. And so I think it's an interesting concept, and I think that I think that I'm glad we did the episode, because it really is sort of
me too.
The I can't express enough that it really is my greatest fear. It is my greatest fear, is that I won't meet my potential, or it has been my greatest fear, and it's and I feel happy that it's going away a bit.
Well, just to say, the value I would assume for many people who are going to listen to this episode, all 12 of them, is that many of them are going to have s- the same fears. This is a big fear, I think, for artists, and I think what part of what
Yeah.
you do in general that I think is great, and is just you march to the beat of your own drum, and I think share things openly in a way that not everyone would, to be honest with you. And the reason I'm saying this is because um I think it would be easy for us to get on here and just go where I have a tendency to go, or where most people go, which is like, yeah, I've just got to meet my potential, to fall in line. And I hopefully this episode has shared different perspectives and
But
given.
it doesn't have to be. I think what you bring to it is it doesn't have to be a painful. None of these things have to be painful, and I think
Sure.
that I think that the ideal is sort of like a middle ground between these two. Is like, for me at least, is like, yes, like you should, not you should, I don't know, I think that you could want to achieve things, and that's okay.
Right.
And there is something in the journey of trying to go after, you know, a better self that should be that could be enjoyable on its own,
Right.
as its own experience, whether or not you achieve it or not, you know. And the journey is the destination in that way. And I think that there is value in that, because listen, I do believe at the end of the day what's working for you is that I think you're overall content and happy in your life. So it's whatever it is, it's whatever it is at the end of the day. It's whatever
Well,
it is.
and this is a side note, but it's so funny. You know, I actually am. And
I believe
and
it.
but let me say, in a lot of ways I shouldn't be. And I want to be clear what I mean by this. I actually would argue that's probably true for most human beings. And what I mean is, I think everyone can agree that life is not easy. It doesn't matter really where you're at in the world. You have $1 million, no money, relationships, no relationships. There's challenges. And I feel like my experience of getting older and aging and is there feels like a constant fork in the road. This is either great, and this is my point about challenges and in
Yeah,
process, and I'm
sure.
working towards things, and I'm growing and I'm evolving, and or this is a nightmare,
Right.
and I could fall apart at any second. And I'm chuckling as I say it because I got on a hop into therapy yesterday. She's like, "How are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, surprisingly well." Meaning, like, when I really because if I really
Because
sit
you're
too
wondering if
long.
you're diluting yourself, basically, like.
Well, it's just funny because I mean, you know more about my life than most people, so you know some of the hardships
Yeah.
that I'm working through, and sometimes they're really hard.
Well,
And
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. Like, yeah,
what?
like, is it? Well, is it like, what I hear you saying is like, am I deluding myself into thinking it's
Right?
good,
Yeah, yeah,
or
exactly.
is it actually not? I mean,
Exactly. This is funny when I randomly find something so funny.
yeah,
Like
it
you'll
is
say something
funny.
stupid.
No, it's no, because I don't know. It's like, and that's why. Look, I don't I don't think you're deluding yourself,
Maybe a
because
little
I
bit,
think you
actually.
have a oh god, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but it's like, because I think you have self-love. So I think you have self-love, and I think that you have a relationship with yourself. And so, you know, that's why I don't think it is a delusion, because I think you're in tune with yourself. I think you
Interesting.
are. So it's like, I yeah,
Well,
it's like,
it's so funny. No, I'm not. I was just going to read something. I think what I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But this is, I guess, my point, if I may, that I, I had to. I grew up very, very quickly, and uh, I'm saying this because to also be honest, and going back to the delusional thing, um, sometimes I think it's about. Sorry, this is now we're going into a whole other territory, and so I'll finish the thought and then let's just end it because I'm
Okay.
going into just to finish the thought, which is that people like me who do the things they do in their lives a lot of times um m- s- want others to think that they are stronger than they are. As you've made
Mm.
comments to me, you're like, it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to to have made a mistake. And I'm just responding to that idea of like, I hear you about the self-love and I hear you about the sense of self, and I do think that's part of it. I actually think that's true. I think that growing up, like, I had to develop a point of view, and I had to, like, I think I did
Mm.
um maybe even inflate my sense of self in some areas for my own needs to survive. But it's a fascinating, complex idea, because I think you are right, but I think a lot of times where it comes from is not always. That's why I'm saying this point is taking us into other territory. We'll go another time. Comfort food performances. I'm going to start because we watched it just last night and it was crazy and I loved it. So I really like this movie. Maybe I was just super stoned. But Eye for an Eye. Have you heard of this movie?
No.
I had never heard of it. Amazing cast, Mike. Ed Harris, Kiefer Sutherland, Sally Field, Joe Mantegna. I mean, the cast, what Beverly D'Angelo was in it. Even Philip Baker Hall. I mean, the
Mm.
cast was crazy. And it's basically about a woman seeking revenge for someone who raped and murdered her daughter. But it was a kooky movie. I highly.
Is it like
This,
is it like a action movie? Is it like a
it's
thriller?
like a psychological thriller. It's a very 90s movie, so it's not
Oh, I
like
love it.
exactly. That's why
I love it.
I think you would really like this movie. Eye
It's
for an Eye.
funny.
It's great.
No, that sounds like a perfect movie. It's like, it's funny. I
It was
went
good
to Chat GPT because I was like, because I'm trying to form the, like, the lookbook for my
because you're a
show.
free thinker.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm a free thinker, so I went to Chat GPT so it could tell me what to think. And like, I like was trying to like explain to him, like, okay, like, why do 90s movies feel so different? Like, what is it
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, we were
And,
just talking about this.
and it's like, what is it about 90s movies that, and it actually and I kind of wrote a bunch of stuff and it like summed it up really well, that it's like they feel, it's just the problem with film now is everything is digital. So everything too is it's hyper produced,
Yes.
it's hyper crisp, it's hyper
Yes.
and there's not, whereas like, in the 90s there was still like
It was
film.
performances.
It was performances, and it
And-
was not as auteurish, and like
Yes.
it was and so it was,
I know what you mean.
because digital but that's the thing, it was the height of the film, because okay, we're shooting with film, so it's still messy and there's still going to be a sense of grit and like a sense of that there's something actually behind the camera, or the camera's filming something, but we have mastered so many techniques at this point. We've mastered all of the techniques, so it's like the most film you can get. And then like it was also saying how like there's more of a stately, it feels more stately, it feels bigger because of the soundtracks were fuller, because it was, there was something about the sets that it felt fuller. It was like, it's funny that like the digitalization of film,
Makes things feel smaller.
of cinema, feels things, well, it makes things feel flat.
That's fair.
It's
Yeah,
actually,
that's what I'm saying.
that's kind of what it
Yeah.
was really saying. It said it had a lot to
Yeah.
do with film, because film felt like there was texture and dimension, like the
Yeah.
hyper 4K raw digital makes everything feel very flat for some reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's fascinating. So this sounds like a perfect movie.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you should watch it. What's yours?
I think I've said it before, but I don't care. I'm watching this movie.
Traitors.
Traders. No, I've definitely said this before. I'm watching. Nick is making me watch Echoes. Because this is somebody who has 400 Disney DVDs, but we're watching this. It's a Netflix show. Sorry, it's a Netflix show that's it's terrible. It's like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. The only person I know, and it's Matt Bomer, but he's making us watch it. And it's like it's about twins who switch lives. It's terrible. But they're older. They're like in their 40s. It's and it's this
So
thriller.
this is
No,
your
no,
comfort
no. I'm
food
getting to it.
performance? Okay.
But Nick is making us watch it because it has twins in it. So we're watching this
Okay.
like Netflix soap opera thriller, but he's not following it. He's just like, they're twins. He just keeps looking at me going, they're twins. I'm like, yes, whatever. But there's a cop in it. There's this woman who's a
When you
cop.
sit down to watch it today, you should be like, are they twins?
Yeah, no, he's like, yes, Michael, they're twins. That's the whole reason we're watching the 7-hour show is because they're just twins.
Because
Anyway,
you're twins.
there's this woman who's trying. It's not good. The woman sheriff in it is trying to do a Columbo. She's trying
Okay.
and she's not good at it. And she's trying to do like this, like, I'm a cop, but I'm like kind of playing stupid and I'm kind of playing like,
Right.
but then she still has to have, but then like, it's just not working. And it just made me realize why Peter Falk was a perfect Columbo. I know, so around it. But all I can think about when I watch this woman who's a major part on the show is how good Peter Falk was at doing this.
Yeah,
At
you've
being
definitely
like
said
the
Peter
dumb
Falk.
cop. Because
Yeah.
have you ever watched Columbo?
No, but
It's
are
perfect.
you? Did you watch season 3 of The Traitors?
No, not yet. No.
Well, they talk about there's a character on there who and in one of the round tables they're like, you're just like Columbo, you're playing dumb, but they talk about Columbo
Yeah,
on the show.
but that's the thing. So the last thing was why it was such a perfect performance is because the whole conceit is that he plays dumb, and all of the criminals he investigates are like hyper geniuses or they're super rich, but he never ever. And the trap this woman's falling into, which is kind of overcompensating, is he always played it like this is like it's like, oh, what, he never like felt like it'd be like aha. He never gave himself like an aha moment or I got you moment when he like found them out. It was all just sort of like he never had to do it.
Right. It was
He never
easy.
had to do that because he was just kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah, I found you out. I caught you. It's like, okay. And it's like, it was genius because he never like kind of dived into that sort of base thing of like having his aha moment. This woman's given herself way too many aha moments. And I'm like, bitch, you got to chill out with that. Anyway, goodbye.
Okay. Goodbye.